We're ready. 7 it is, least on my watch. I know some of you are thinking, not on my watch. But that isn't what that means. All right, well, how's everybody doing tonight? Doing well? You guys look very well. Everybody looks good and roaring and ready to go. We have a Zoom audience online, and there's another one. So good evening to you all on Zoom, and I hope that you can hear me. I hope my audio. There we go. Thank you, Alex, for that. All right, why don't we pray, and then we'll begin. Okay? Father, we're here tonight to give our whole beings over to you, that you would be able to help us to be able to learn your word and learn how to live out your word. And, Father, we want to give you glory and honor tonight, and we want to ask ultimately that you in us, you are our great rabbi. You are the one who leads us, teaches us. So we give our evening to you, and we thanks you for your word, your written word, and your living word, and your spirit within us. In Yeshua's name, amen. All right, we're going to begin with Hebrew. I hope that you guys all printed out your notes or you got notes, one or the other, okay? So we have 5 more new-ish, get it, ish, because that's the number 1 word, new-ish words. You're on it, buddy, all right? And then we're going to read, all right? And I will be calling on you individually that you might read out loud. And we're going to start with you, Jim. All right. The words are ish. Ish. Say that with me. Ish. Okay, and it means man, and it is a generic word that means man, okay? There's another word that means man. That anybody know what that word is? Adam. Adam, like Adam. Okay? So it's Adam. All of you beloved guests that are on Zoom, and there's a lot of you tonight, if you would mute your mics, that'd be really good, because otherwise we have a little ringing going on. Thank you very much. I think there's a mute button down at the bottom somewhere on your Zoom. Thanks. Good job. Okay, so you have ish, which is man, then you have, and it might mean husband. But in Hebrew, in biblical Hebrew, there really is no word husband and wife. It's man and woman. So when you hear Adam said to his wife, literally it's Adam said to his woman. Okay, but then you think, oh, his woman, does that mean he owns her? Well, then the woman says to her man. Okay, and there's just as much evidence that the woman owns the man as the man owns the woman. And we're not going to go into that tonight. That's way back in Genesis 1. But that's the word ish, okay? The next word, if you look at only the Hebrew, and there's a beit and a yod and a tav, okay? That is what altogether? Beit, okay? Slowly it would be bite, okay? But we just use beit, okay? And it means house, okay? The next word is a noon and a tav and another noon. You say, well, that noon doesn't look like the other noon. If you remember when we went over the letters, there are a few letters that when they're at the end of the word, they look different. Noon is one of those letters. Okay? So how would you pronounce noon, tav, noon? Natan. Okay? So the word is not on. And it's the word that is name that we know, Nathan, and it means give. Okay? Natan, give. To give, okay? The next word is really easy in a way. It's an ayin, which is a silent letter, but it is going to make a noise because you got to have a vowel noise in the word. Otherwise, you're just going to be okay? And the word is am, and it means people. So, for example, did we have the word last week, eretz? Did we have the word eretz? And do you remember what eretz means? Land or earth. Okay? The letter hey in Hebrew, when it's at the beginning of a noun, it means the. Okay? So you have eretz, which means land. If you have a ha at the beginning, you have haaretz, and that means the land. Okay? So if you have haaretz, you have people of the land. People of the land. Haaretz. Okay? And the last word is a verb, and it is halak. I think most of you already know that one. Halak. It means walk. It's a hey and a lamed and a kof. Halak. Now, we get other words from that word. One word we get is halakah, and that means the way you walk. In Judaism, it means the rules of a rabbi, if you will. The way a rabbi looks, any particular rabbi looks at Torah and lives it out, is that rabbi's halakha. Judaism has books of halakha, rules. Okay? But what it really means is the way you walk, how you walk. Okay? All right, now look in your notes at all of those jumbly, gorgeous-looking Hebrew letters there, and we're going to read beginning on the right and go all the way across. Some of you already know this because you've been doing this for more than a year, all right? But we're going to go very slowly. All we're going to do is pronounce the words slowly, and then we're going to learn what they mean, okay? So here we're going to begin with Beit, Resh, Aleph, Shin, Yod, Tav. So it's going to be something like this. Ba, Ra, Sha'it. Ba, Ra, Sha'it. All right? And that word is Barashit. Okay? In English, we translate that in the beginning. But really, there's no the on there. So really, literally, it's in beginning. Okay? Barashit. If you remove the bait at the beginning of it, reshit is a word that means beginning or a head or leader. Okay? So you add a ba at the beginning of it. Ba means in. And you remember what the letter bait is a picture of in the ancient language? What is it? It's a house or a tent, which is why it means in. Because you go in your house, you go in your tent. The bait means in, so you have this word, barashit. Okay? All right, the next word is a bait, a resh, and an aleph. So you have, sound it out, ba-ra. Right? Because the aleph on the end is silent. Ba-ra. The word is bara. Bara. Okay? And it means create. And that word bara create is only used of God in the Bible. It's never used. A human being doesn't bara. Only God bara. P-A-R-A. B-A-R-A. Bara. Okay? Now, if you're writing under it your own pronouncing letters, do whatever works. Because somewhere you may read online and look at an online Bible and it'll have it one way, and then you look at something else and it has it another way. It doesn't matter. It's only the way that you remember how the word sounds. Okay? All right, the next word is Aleph, Lamed, He, Yod, Mem. Everybody knows that one. Elohim. Elohim. Okay? And remember, in the oldest Hebrew, there's no vowels. The vowels were made hundreds of years later, and it's easier, I believe it's easier to learn the words and then go and learn the vowels, which is what we're doing, which is the way they did it when they were children as well. All right, altogether, those three words from the beginning, get it? From the beginning? Here we go. Barashit, bara Elohim. Now, the next word is usually not, it doesn't have a meaning. Okay? In English, it isn't there at all. In Hebrew, remember what it is? Aleph Tav. Okay? And it has a lot of mystical meaning. Okay? Because it's all over the Tanakh. You will have this Aleph Tav. Now, it marks a direct object of a verb. Okay? But it means something else as well, as we've already learned. It's like the mark of God. Because God is the one who acts. Okay? He's the one who moves and acts and creates. And you have this Aleph Tav throughout the Tanakh. And in Revelation, Yeshua is, right? He says, I am the Aleph and the Tav, which means the beginning and the end, which means a lot, okay? Now, and we're reading it in Hebrew. The way we're going to pronounce it is eight. 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 Yep, like the number 8. Okay? Next word, you have a He and a Shin and a Mem and a Yod and a Mem. Notice the Mem at the end doesn't look like that other Mem, because Mem is a letter that changes at the end of a word. Okay, there's not many of them. There's only 5 of them, I believe. Okay, so this is going to be pronounced something like this. Ha-sh-ma-yim. Ha-sh-ma-yim. Okay? Altogether, it would be ha-sh-ma-yim. Ha-sh-ma-yim. That hey at the beginning is the. Okay? Sh-ma-yim is heavens. Heavens. Okay? So that's the heavens. Ha-sh-ma-yim. Okay, now, we have a tricky word, because what you have here is you have the 8, the Aleph Tav, with a Vav at the beginning of it. Okay, and we're going to pronounce it Va'et. Va'et. Okay? Now, I know that you already know this. There's different Hebrew schools on earth. Okay? One of them believes and knows with all their heart that a Vav is a Vav and it's a Va. The other school knows and believes with all their heart that a Vav is a Wa and it's Wa. So you hear it different ways. But remember, Alan was bringing this up to me about a week ago, I think. Remember that if you are Russian, there's a letter that they don't pronounce. What is it? Wa. They pronounce wa, va, right? So anyway, I'm making you aware. I don't want to confuse you, but I just want you to be aware. So if you ever hear anybody go, well, it's wa-8, they're not wrong. It can be wa-8 or va-8. To make it easy on all of us, I'm using va. Whenever there's a vav, I'm going to use va. Except when the vav is an O, but we haven't learned that yet. Va-8. Yep. And that va-8 in English is going to just be and, because the 8 is not translatable, and they're going to use it as and. And if you look in the Hebrew Bible, there's vavs everywhere, but they don't always mean and. But here, it's and. Okay, so you have Barashit, bara, Elohim, 8, Hashmayim, va-8, and the last word is a hey, and an aleph, and a resh, and a sade. Okay? So it's going to be something like this. Ha-a-retz. There's that word, eretz. When there's a hey at the beginning of it, it's ha-eretz. Actually, it's ha-aretz. Okay? Ha-aretz is what? The earth. Okay? So all together, out loud. Barashit, bara, Elohim, 8, Hashamayim, va-8, haaretz. Okay? Now, if you've written it down, you can go home and you can just look at those letters and you can practice. And next week, we'll have another sentence. All right? So, you learned Genesis 1:1 in Hebrew. Congratulations. Good job. All right, now we're going to move into our Torah lesson, which is BESHALACH. BESHALACH. The word shalach means send. Okay? It is on the end. Shlach is how you pronounce it. And shalach means send. Okay? In Hebrew, a shaliach is one who is sent, like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Moses and all of those who are prophets. They're also sent ones. And they even use that word. Like in Isaiah. Do you know in Isaiah where he has the vision of Yehovah and he says there he was, high and lifted up, and he asked me, who will go for me? Who might I send? And who will go? And Isaiah says, I'll go. Okay? When he does that, Isaiah is now a shaliach. He is a sent one. Okay? Hineni that was his answer. Hineni, which is, here I am, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do what you want me to do. Okay? All right, now, this is one of the most easy and exciting reads in the world. In any language, in any book, in any history, this reading that you already did or that you're going to do in the next couple of days is like major action adventure. We're going to get to the end. We've already ended the plagues, and now you have Israel leaving, going through the wilderness. If anybody's ever been to the wilderness of Egypt and Arabia, you know it's desert, it's wilderness. There's millions of them, and they're going to be led by the pillar of fire and the smoke or the cloud. Literally, God leads them out of Egypt. Moses leads them, but God leads them, right? Okay, it begins like this. And after Pharaoh had let the people go. I don't know what Bible version you have or you use. I'm using the Tree of Life version. But what I want you to know is even in the Tree of Life, that's not a good translation. It's literally after Pharaoh shot them out like an arrow. Okay, he had way more than enough, and when he wanted them to leave, it wasn't, all right, go ahead, you guys leave now. That wasn't what it was. It was like, get out now, okay? God did not lead them along the road to the land of the Philistines, although that was nearby. For God said the people might change their minds if they see war and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the way of the wilderness into the Sea of Reeds, or the Red Sea. Really, both of those translations are okay? It's Yam Suf. So remember that, okay? And Bnei Israel went up out of the land of Egypt armed. Okay, so this, God didn't want them in their minds to be leaving as a group of pitiful slaves. He wanted them to leave as an army, the very army of God. Because what is it that they were going to do? He wanted them to go into the land and take the land. Okay? So the idea is like the word hosts, God of hosts. All the hosts of Israel left. Okay? Now, this is what is amazing. And just to let you know how I'm in this with you, that I have known what you're going to learn right now. I have known less than 2 weeks. Some of you already knew it, but I didn't know it. All right? There is I'm not going to use the word legend. There is a story in Judaism, and it's in the book of Yasher, that a group of Ephraimites in Egypt, that would be those who were in Egypt who were of the tribe of Ephraim, they left Egypt early. They knew that eventually they were going to get out of Egypt, okay? That word had been given many years earlier to Abraham, and then presumably to Isaac and Jacob. It had been given to Joseph that they were going to go to Egypt, but they were going to leave. Like 400-ish years later, they were going to leave, okay? So you had a group of Ephraimites, and they were thinking of the numbers, and maybe they got the numbers wrong, but the idea is they left Egypt on their own, armed, battle. They went up north, like right up north and around the Mediterranean, right into the land of the Philistines, where they got their, let me see, how can I say this in nice English? They lost. They lost in battle, and all but 10 of them died and were killed in battle. And there were like 30,000 of them, I think, according to what you read in Jasher. Okay? They lost the battle, and the Philistines left their bones laying in the roads and in the fields, somewhere near the valley of Jezreel. Does that ring a bell? Where have you ever heard that in the Bible? The valley of Jezreel. Ezekiel and the dry bones. There literally was a heap of dry bones, and it was Ephraim. Now, was it wrong for them to leave Egypt? No. Was it the wrong time? Yes. Okay? So what does that mean? That means God not only has things that he's going to do, but he has moments where it is the right moment and moments where it is the wrong moment. So if that really happened, and whether there's archaeological evidence about that yet, I don't know yet because I didn't dig into it that much. Okay, however, I added in your notes that you can read some other Bible verses that would lead you to believe that this is exactly what happened. And then there's a great article there online at www.thetorah.com. There's a lot of other articles. If you go into your search engine and put Ephraimites leave Egypt early, you'll be amazed what comes up there. One of them is Judaism 101. The other one is the Jewish Encyclopedia. So why I never knew that? Nobody ever told me, and I never read it till this week. But now you know why God would go, I don't want them going that way. Okay? Not only are there bad guys there that might, beat them up, although 6 million, but they're going to run right through all those bones. And I don't want them thinking that they're going to get their rear ends whipped right at the beginning. So, anyway, whatever that's worth, that might have been worth the whole evening just to hear that. Okay, now, when Pharaoh let them go, I already told you it's shalah, forgot an H on the word there, that means send out or shoot out. In other words, get out and get out now. Okay, now we're going to read on. The 13th chapter, verse 20. They journeyed from Sukkot, and they encamped in Etham on the edge of the wilderness. Adonai went before them in the pillar of cloud by day to lead the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light, so they could travel both day and night. The pillar of cloud by day and of fire by night never departed from the people. So the moment they left, he was with them. And he wasn't only with them, he was with them in a visible way. Now, if you're already wondering, then why in the world didn't they believe? Don't be hard on them, okay? We are they. We are them. They are us, okay? Same things have happened in our lives where God has done something amazing, and we knew that God did something amazing, and then we don't remember. When the next mountain is there that we have to get over, we're like, which is, again, why remembering is right in the middle of Torah, that God commands it over and over and over again. Remember. Hand down these stories of what I've done. And I don't mean by using that word that they didn't happen. Okay? They're narratives. This is a narrative about what happened. History is a narrative, right? It's more than dates. There's a story that goes along with it. Right now, in our nation, they are making new narratives, taking all of the stories of what happened and writing new ones. Good luck with that. Okay? Notice the name of where they camped. All right? Sukkot is what that word is. What does that mean? It means booths or huts or shelters. Jacob was there at somewhere that had that name. There's more than one of them, okay, that have that name. And that reminds us of the appointment of that name, all right, Sukkot, which we know as tabernacles, right? And that happens in the fall. And what we do then is we remember this event. Okay, so they camped on night number 1 at the tabernacles area, and then they're going to remember it forever. And God names the holy day after where they camped, because he wanted them to remember he was with them. It's amazing. Amazing, right? Now, this is amazing as well. In John 1, it reads, "And the Word became flesh and tabernacled among us." Okay? Yeshua lived, dwelt, pitched his tent among us. Okay? Can you imagine being led by that fire and that cloud? Now, we've already had something a little bit like this when Abraham, remember, cut the animals up, and there was a smoking torch of fire that went through the animals. Remember? And that was, who was that? That was God, Yehovah. Okay? Now, Yehovah, again, is a fire. And in Hebrews, what do you read? Our Elohim, our God, is an all-consuming fire. A little bit later, a couple of guys are going to get burned because they got near. And they didn't get near the right way. And that's something else that we need to learn. There is a right way for us to draw near to God, and there are a lot of wrong ways to draw near to God. The whole book of Leviticus is about drawing near. Okay? We'll learn more about that when we get there. All right, on we go. So now what happens is Pharaoh has another moment of hard-heartedness and maybe looked around at all the jobs he just lost. Said, wait a minute, this is not going to work. Our whole economy is going to go into the dirt. All right, we got to go get those guys back. And so what we read in the 7th verse, 14, he, that's Pharaoh, got his chariots ready and took all of his army with him. Okay? 600 of the finest chariots, along with all other chariots of Egypt, and captains over them. Everybody get on board. We got to go get these 600,000 men, these millions of human beings back. We got to get them back. Okay? Now, there's evidence in history that chariots had just been invented. Okay, so what that means is Pharaoh, he had Hummers, he had, what are those, MVs or whatever. He had the latest gear that was available on earth, okay, in going after them. Now, the Israelites, they look and they notice, Egypt is behind us, and what is out ahead of us is a bunch of water. Okay, and what is over to the right and over to the left is mountains that we're not getting up. Okay, because there's a valley that comes down into where they landed at the shore of the sea. By the way, next week, I hope to have a map in your notes, and we'll look at the route, the whole route of the Exodus and where they went. The most recent archaeology indicates that the traditional route of the Exodus is wrong. Okay, that they didn't go down on that little pointy thing in Egypt that is now known as the wilderness of Sinai, but they went north and they ended up at the arm of the Red Sea. known as the Gulf of Aqaba. And they crossed over there, and they ended up in Midian, which would make sense because that's where it's written in the Word that they ended up. And that the mountain of God is in Midian. Midian is not on that little thing of land in the middle. Midian is in Arabia. And the mountain is there today. In Arabian, it's known as either the mountain of Moses or the mountain of God in the Arabian language, okay? And there's a lot of archaeological evidence around there that is the mountain that is the mountain of God. There's a cave in it. There's a giant split rock. It's all there, okay? And if you don't have those movies that I mentioned, they go over all of this, the patterns of evidence movies. They're really good. I think you can download them, for $20 or something like that. Okay, so now the Israelites, they look at what's happening. And in verse 11, they said to Moses, "Have you taken us away to die in the wilderness because there were no graves in Egypt? Why have you dealt with us this way to bring us out of Egypt?" Fire and cloud. Okay? Miraculous deliverance out of plagues, and yet, what are we going to do? Now, a couple years ago, I look at human behavior and behavior like that, and I go, that is just bizarre. But now, in 2021, after being through 2020, I'm like, that's normal. Fear is the devil's number one arrow, I believe. Okay? And they are afraid, and now they're angry because Moses isn't doing whatever is right. Moses, you should have just obeyed Pharaoh. I'm just, maybe I'm making... Never mind. All right, but here's what happens. But Moses said this to the people: "Don't be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of Adonai, which he will perform for you today. You have seen the Egyptians today, but you will never see them again, ever. Adonai will fight for you while you hold your peace." Then Adonai said to Moses, this is very interesting because there's not a line in between here. So what I picture Moses standing up and going, "Stop being afraid. Your Yehovah, your God, is going to deliver you. Just stop murmuring and whining. God, what am I going to do?" Because the next line is, then Adonai said to Moses, "Why are you crying to me? Tell Bnei Israel to go forward. Lift up your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. Then Bnei Israel will go into the midst of the sea on dry ground." Okay, a couple of things that I want to mention there. One of them is, notice that God's words to Moses are not, "Stretch out your hand over the sea and I will divide it." His words are, "Moses, you do it." Okay? Now, this is going to be a great deliverance that we remember even to this day. But there were some things that they had to do. This wasn't sit back in your lazy boys and watch God deliver you. Okay? When you read those words, stand still, that literally means shut up. That's what it means. Stop whining. Okay? Shh. Relax. Okay, number one, don't be afraid. As you already know, this is the most often commanded command in the Bible. More than anything else, don't be afraid. Fear is a direct manifestation of lack of trust in God, isn't it? Has anybody been afraid in the last year at all? Okay. How about in the last month? I'm the only one. The sinner. Okay, so what do? You recognize it. You ask God to forgive you, and then you kick it out of your life. Get out. In the name of Yeshua, get out. Okay? I will not be afraid. Isn't that what is written in Psalm 91? Now, why do you think that is written in Psalm 91? Is that one of David's? Moses wrote that one. Thank you. Okay, 90 and 91. I will not be afraid. Why would you write that? Because you are. Okay, it's a way of letting you know that even Moses, even David, even all of them had to deal with what you deal with. And a lot more, I imagine, but the reality is God knows that we are human. God knows that we don't always walk right. Yes? And he's gracious and he's merciful. But what he gives us is he gives us ways to get rid of that. Right? Okay? So that's number one. Secondly, the word stand still means quiet your mind and stand your ground. In other words, don't run away. Okay? This is what Paul, I believe, was writing about when he wrote to the Ephesians. Take up the full armor of God so that you may be able to resist when the times are evil, and after you have done everything, stand firm. That's a good word. Okay? The next, his next words were, see the salvation of Yehovah. In other words, open your eyes to what God is about to do. Even when you are what looks like you are trapped and there's no way out, just wait. Okay? And then go forward. Once you have gotten rid of the fear and you are in position, then you wait on the word and then you move. Okay? In other words, you don't wait forever. The word of Yehovah to them and was that they will go into the midst of the sea on dry ground. They're going to literally pull up their tent pegs and march right into the middle of the water. Okay? But the water's not going to be there. Why? Well, then Moses, he obeyed. He stretched out his hand over the sea. Adonai drove the sea back with a strong east wind throughout the night and turned it into dry land. So the waters were divided. Then Bnei Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, while the waters were like walls to their right and their left. A couple of things there. Dry ground means dry ground. It doesn't mean squishy ground. It doesn't mean quicksand ground. It doesn't mean lots of water puddles. It means dry, like a desert, dry ground. So that's everything about it is amazing. All right, that it is a miracle, and maybe you've wondered, as I've wondered, why the wind? I mean, couldn't God have just gone, bloop, and it would have happened? Okay? Why does it look like he's using nature? Okay, he did that in Egypt, didn't he? Frogs were not unusual. The number of frogs were unusual. Locusts were not unusual. The number of locusts were unusual. So the only thing happened in there that there's no explanation for really is the darkness and the death of all the firstborn of Egypt, which is why Pharaoh was like, get out of here. Okay? But why would he use nature? Why would he use the wind? Well, think about what the Egyptians believed about nature. It was a god, or it was many gods. So what he is doing is he's demonstrating not only, look, this water I can make go away, okay? But not only that, I am the one who tells nature what to do. Okay, so you don't need to worship the wind anymore because I'm the only one. So that's an idea. Okay, now the Hebrew word yam is sea, and it means roar. So where else do you hear the word roar in the Bible? Your enemy, the devil, is like a roaring lion. Okay, who prowls about looking for someone to devour. Okay. In the Hebrew mind, water and the sea means chaos. Okay? Remember the letter M? The letter M is waves, and waves mean chaos. Why? Well, if you've been out on the ocean, you know. Sometimes it's nice, but when it is not nice, it's really not nice. Okay? And the word yam in the ancient language means make chaos. Okay? A related word is shalom, which means destroy the authority attached to chaos. So what does Yehovah do? The Hebrews are in the middle of chaos, and he, I don't want to use the word destroys, but he demonstrates he has authority even over the ocean. Does that remind you of anything? Jesus in the boat, right? And what does he do? Calm down. And the chaos, the waves, settle right down. Okay? So that means that if he can do it in Exodus, and if he can do it in the Gospels, he can do it right now. He can do it today. He can do it in our lives. Right? Okay. All right. Now, Moses stretched out his hand again over the waters. All the Egyptians had ridden down into where the dry land was in the middle of the waters, and Moses stretched out his hands, and the sea returned to its strength at the break of dawn. The Egyptians were fleeing from it, but Adonai overthrew them in the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots, the horsemen, and the entire army of Pharaoh that went after them into the sea. Not one of them remained. Isn't that what Moses just said to them? You're not going to see them ever again. Okay? And that's exactly what happened. Yehovah destroyed the enemy. Now that reminds me of what Paul wrote in Colossians about Yeshua, that after disarming the principalities and powers, Those are demonic beings. He disarmed them. He made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them in the cross. So think about that, okay? While he is hanging there, dying, the devil is thinking, ha, 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 I got you now. When did the devil realize, uh-oh, I don't have you now? You know, maybe the resurrection, maybe earlier. On the cross. So, anyway, it's related. What happened with Yeshua is greatly related to what we're reading about in the Exodus. Okay? Now, we read next in 14 verse 31. When Israel saw the great work that Adonai did over the Egyptians, the people feared Adonai, and they believed in Adonai and in his servant Moses. For a little while is what ended up happening. Okay, now hold on to that. Think about that a minute. Does that mean that you might trust in God today and maybe not tomorrow? Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank God he is merciful and gracious, and I believe holds us in his hand. That doesn't mean that you're not able to jump out of his hand, right? Okay, but in general, he's with us during all of our ups and our downs, and he's with Israel. There are going to be moments where God looks at Moses and says, I'm leaving, I'm done, right? Okay, but in the end, he doesn't leave. All right, so what this means, what you're going to notice, is that Israel believed, but they only believed for a very little while, a very short time. And what we can learn about this are a couple of things. Number one, miracles, signs, and wonders do not always bring lasting faith in God. Okay? They just don't. Even in Yeshua's day, not everybody that witnessed a miracle ended up following him. Okay? It's the way we are, okay? Secondly, we learn that belief and trust in God is an ongoing process of walking, not walling. There should be a K there. Walking with him. Which is why over and over again you read, walk with me. Walk with the Lord. As you walk with him. Okay? He knows that everything doesn't happen in an instant. Right? It's a walk that we're on with him, which is really good news. Because if it happens in an instant, or if it was supposed to all happen in an instant, and now you're living your life and you're thinking, well, what am I doing? I don't feel like I'm growing. What is all this about? It might be that you never learned that it's your life, all your life. It's a journey. It's a walk. On the walk, we grow. When we begin the walk, we're beginners, right? And sometimes people who have walked a long way look back and, for whatever reason, think the beginners are going to be where they are. It doesn't work that way, okay? Trusting in God is a walk, and you learn and you grow, okay? So now they got through the water. They got through Egypt's army that was destroyed, all right? And in that moment when they are filled up with trust, they sing what we know of as the Song of Moses. It's basically the hallelujah chorus in Exodus. All right? And they praise him. And they sing to Yehovah. He is highly exalted. This is what he did, and we'll never forget. Until a couple days when you have no water. We'll never forget what he did. Okay? And I love the line, he has become my salvation, is literally, he has become my Yeshua. All right? Now, I threw this in your notes because it's neat. That's all. Okay? This isn't like the ancient Torah from Moses' day. This is like the Torah scrolls today look like this at Exodus. When you're reading about the Song of Moses, they have arranged the words so that it looks like Israel is walking with walls of water on their right and on their left. So I just think that's neat that they would do it that way. Okay, moving on. Then Moses led Israel onward from the Yam Suf. They went out in the wilderness of Shur, but they traveled 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Stop right there. That doesn't mean they didn't have any water with them. They may have had water with them, a little bit of water, but the bottom line is they didn't find any water. So their reserves ran out along the way to where they were getting dry. Okay, then they came to Marah, and they could not drink the waters because they were bitter. On account of this, it was called Marah. Okay, and then the people complained to Moses, saying, "What are we going to drink?" And he cried out to Adonai, and Adonai showed him a tree. When he threw it into the waters, they were made sweet. Yeah, a tree, which is what Messiah was on, right? Okay, the Hebrew word bitter is mar, which is where you get the name of Marah. Okay, in the ancient picture language, it is waves and the head of a person, which means chaos in the head, which is what bitterness is. Bitterness is chaos in your head. It brings non-reasoning, right? So the water was bitter, and those who had 3 days ago walked on dry ground and were full of trust became bitter and grumbled and complained. And we need to realize that this spirit of bitterness is a continual danger for all of us. Whenever things don't go our way, whenever we're worried about whatever, okay? Whenever somebody says something that wounds us, okay? Bitterness is right there if we don't watch it. Okay, so what do? How do we get rid of bitterness? Forgiveness, right? Okay? Yeshua died on a tree, which revealed God's forgiveness, driving away the bitterness of sin. Okay, just like that tree was applied to the water, we apply what Yeshua did to our lives. We learn to forgive, and we drive away bitterness, and our waters are sweet. Okay, so then we read next, there he made a statute and an ordinance for them, and there he tested them, which he's going to do more than once, okay? Just as if you guys were high school students and I were your teacher, I would test you. See if you were learning what I wanted you to learn along the way as we walked. Jesus did that. He looked at his disciples more than once and said something to them like this. They came to them. They were like, Yeshua, what are you going to do? All these people have been out here all day, and we have nothing to eat. And so he goes, feed them. They were like, what? We got nothing. Okay. Anyway, that's what that means. It doesn't mean tempt them. It means test them in order to reveal what is going on in them. Right? Okay. So then, here are his words. If you, Israel, diligently listen. What's that word in Hebrew? Shema. Shema. If you diligently shema the voice of Adonai your God, do what is right in his eyes, pay attention to his mitzvot, and keep all his decrees, I will put none of the diseases on you which I have put on the Egyptians, for I am Adonai who heals you. In Hebrew it would be Yod-He-Vav-He Rapha. Okay? And since God revealed that as one of his names, okay, I am the God who heals you. It's a name, Yehovah Rapha. And we know that he never changes. Then doesn't that mean that now, for us, today, that he is Yehovah Rapha, the God who heals us? Okay? I believe that. Okay, now, notice if they were going to experience God as their healer, he gave the words at the beginning of that statement, if. If you diligently listen to the voice of Adonai your God and do what is right, okay? In other words, obedience and healing are related. Now, I would love to be able to have that in a box where it always worked. I would love that. Okay? But, I mean, what has it been in your life? But let us think of this a different way. Living in obedience to God and his ways brings health into your life. Okay? That doesn't mean that you can just sit back and eat Doritos all night and drink beer and watch television and expect that you're going to be healthy because you believe in God. That's not what that means. Okay? One of the areas of our life of belief in God is loving yourself and your body and caring for what he gave you. So we do our best. I know that, right? But the whole idea is a life of obedience and a life with God is a whole lot better than a life without him. Okay? So next, Israel has nothing to eat. And so what do? They do what they always do. They complain. And they wish that they were back in Egypt. Because in Egypt they had enough to eat, and they liked some of the things that they ate in Egypt. Okay? So then Moses said this in 16:8. Then Moses said, Adonai will give you meat to eat in the evening and enough bread to fill you in the morning. Since Adonai hears your complaints that you mutter against him. I mean, what are we? Your complaining is not against us, but against Adonai. And so what happened? Quails covered where they were, their camp. And somebody worked it out that in order to feed, if there were only 600,000, which is the number given back in Exodus, but we know there were much more because that was only the men. But if there's only 600,000 men, in order that quails feed them, okay, and then you have women and children and a mixed multitude, you'd need about 105 million of them. Okay, so no wonder they were deep and they were walking in that. Has anyone ever eaten quail? It is delicious. Okay, when I read this, I get hungry because I love quail. It's a little bit like grouse. How many of you have eaten grouse? Okay, how about ptarmigan, which is chicken? Never mind. Yeah, that's right. All right. Anyway, the idea is they're really good. Okay. The bread was manna. In Hebrew, it means, what is it? Because they didn't know what it was. And they looked and they said, man, which means, what is it? Okay. In other words, they named it, whatchamacallit. It was bread from heaven. Now, did you notice when you read that it was obvious they're getting that bread every day wasn't about them getting their donuts. It wasn't about them. It wasn't about their hunger. It was about God used it in order to bring something else. What was it? Yes, faith in him. And then they learned a lesson about Shabbat, okay, through what God was doing with the manna, okay? Later on in Deuteronomy, we read, Deuteronomy 8:3, he afflicted you and let you hunger, and then he fed you manna, which neither you nor your fathers had known, in order to make you understand that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Adonai. That's the verse that Yeshua quoted when the devil wanted him to turn the rocks into bread because he was hungry. Okay? So not only that, but they learned that if they didn't obey God's mitzvot, which was 6 days, you can go collect this manna. On day 7, don't go out to get it. But what happened? People went out to get it. And what happened? It wasn't there. Okay? And then some of the other things that happened. Okay. Let's review. Okay? Yehovah does amazing miracles in Egypt, and Pharaoh shoots them out. They're trapped by the sea, and Yehovah blows back the waters, and they walk through on dry ground, and Egypt's army is destroyed. Bitter water is made sweet. They are miraculously given bread and meat. And as they journey a little bit more, they run out of water again. And you read in the 17th chapter, verse 1, all the congregation of Bnei Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin in stages according to the command of Adonai. So how did they know when to leave and go to the next camp? The cloud and the fire. It hadn't left yet. So as they're complaining, they're looking at either fire or cloud, which may be one of the reasons why Moses was like, look, who are we? You're not griping at us. Take it up with him. Okay? Pointing in the direction of the fire. Okay? But now they camped at Rephidim, but there was no water there for them to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, give us water to drink. And Moses said, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test Adonai? Adonai said to Moses, walk before the people. Take of the elders of Israel with you, along with your staff, with which you struck the river. Remember the river Nile? Take it in your hand and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock in Oreb. You are to strike the rock, and water will come out of it, so that the people can drink. So Moses strikes the rock, and the water comes flowing out. Amazing. Now, there is a rock in the land of Midian, in Arabia, near the mountain of God, that looks like what you would imagine a split rock would look like. And there is a evidence of a flood of water right in front of where that rock is. Okay? So when the water came out of the rock, you got millions of people there. So it was a river. It was like a river. Okay? Yeah, right? And they had animals that needed to drink. Okay? Now, later on in 1 Corinthians, we read this. This is what Paul wrote about that event. But remember, Paul is a rabbi. So he uses remez, he uses midrash, he uses lessons about things that happened then in order to bring about truths in the lives of his hearers when he lived, okay? And this is what he wrote. Brothers, I don't want you to miss the significance of what happened to our fathers. All of them were guided by the pillar of cloud, and they all passed through the sea. And in connection with the cloud and the sea, they all immersed themselves into Moses. And they all ate the same food from the Spirit, and they all drank the same drink from the Spirit, for they drank from a Spirit-sent rock which followed them, and that rock was the Messiah. The rock was the Messiah. What was Moses to do in order to get the water out of the rock? Strike the rock, which is exactly what happened to Jesus. Okay? But you need to remember this. He was only struck once. So Moses here is giving a picture of what's going to happen when the ultimate rock is struck and living water comes out. Right? Living water is the Holy Spirit. Yeshua said that in John during the Feast of Sukkot one day when the priest was pouring out water like they did every year on that feast. And you read, Yeshua stood up and cried out loudly, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scripture says, out of his innermost being will flow rivers of living water. Wow. Now, think about this as well. Later, this is going to happen again, and Moses is to go to the rock, and he's not to strike the rock. Remember? What is he going to be commanded to do? Yes, speak to the rock. Why? Because it's only to be struck once. Yeshua only died once. Okay? From then on out, how do we access what Yeshua did in order to get the living water? We speak. Right? Speak. Speak words. Yep. Okay, that is the end of the reading for the night. Now we have a little while, and here's what we're going to do, because we have like a lot of Zoom people tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and however many of you are here. So if you have a question, raise your hand. And you guys on Zoom are going to watch me leave, but I'm not gone. I'm just going out there. And I'm going to give them the mic so that everybody can hear. Okay? There was a hand in this general area. I'm going to guess it was you, Jim. Oh, it wasn't? Okay. I'll hold the mic.
Okay, thank you. In the message, so it makes it a little bit more clear to me, it says most of them were defeated by temptation during the hard times. Okay, so is the temptation then? Was the temptation to not trust, to grumble, to complain? Is that specifically? Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
And learn. Remember our history and learn and be warned.
I believe it was going back to Egypt. Okay? Going back to Egypt begins with grumbling. Going back to Egypt begins when looking at whatever's going on in your life and going, I don't need this. Okay? And then finally going, you know what? This is not worth it. Okay? Living this life with God is not worth it because it isn't easy. Even though He is our healer and He is good and He watches over us, you never read the words, you know what? It's going to be really easy. You're going to leave Egypt and it's going to be easy. No, you didn't hear that at all. Yeah, don't be afraid it's going to be easy. That isn't what we heard, is it? So, James, I'm going to go to you.
Well, I'll just start with what you finished with at the end because it's easiest and going in that order. I don't understand when you said, well, how do we access Him now by speaking? How did we access Him before? Are you speaking to removing the Levitical priesthood after He comes or not? Or where are you going with that?
Okay, I think I get that. When Yeshua was in John, when he was speaking to his disciples about the Holy Spirit, he was like, almost like, you're not going to get this right now, but you will, okay? And when you do, you will ask whatever you want, and it'll be given to you, okay? That asking means speak. You will pray. You will ask. You will use your words, like I said to my little ones when they're growing up. There's a certain point where you look at them and you're like, use your words, okay? So that's all I was getting at with that. So we don't need to go back and do it all over again and put Jesus back on the cross. We don't have to do that because it was only a once-for-all event. Yep. Okay?
So how did the Egyptians contain all of the children of Israel before they left? I mean, how did they physically keep them there? And then once they left, at some point in time, they became a very feared fighting force. And why did it take so long for that to happen? And why didn't they just conquer the Egyptians before they left? Because before they got to where they were going, they had nations running in fear until they sent the spies out, and then they had to go 40 years in the desert.
Okay, that's like 11 questions in one. Okay, all I can do there is give you what I think, okay? So any group of humans that are trodden down long enough lose their breath, if you will. We read that in last week's lesson, or a couple weeks ago, when Moses went in and looked at the elders, and he was like, we're going to leave Egypt. We're going to get out. God's going to deliver us. We're going to go right now to Pharaoh. But due to their lack of spirit, their lack of breath, because of the burdens that had been laid on them, they were unable to believe it, right? Okay, so you have that as an element of it. So when we read that they left as a host, or they left as an army, they learned to be an army in the wilderness, I believe, some of them, okay? There were those among them who were warriors, like Joshua, all right? The vast majority of them were not. The vast majority of them were shepherds, okay? But they were slaves, okay? And they had adopted that mindset of being a slave. It's almost like how I think I can say this. It's almost like being on welfare when you have the ability to work. It's like you get used to it. And once you're used to it, then you don't move out from where you are. So it wasn't that hard, I don't think, for the Egyptians to contain them. They weren't armed like the Egyptians. That's the other thing. The Egyptian army was a well-armed, well-trained military might in the world. Okay? Even though there were a lot of Israelites, 600,000 men, it wouldn't have matched up to a big army like that, to a huge army like that. So those are my ideas about it. Okay, Tom.
I've been reading some books about the Exodus, and when it says Pharaoh's army died, that includes the Pharaoh. Everybody died on the side. And the other thing, because the Bible doesn't say that, it just says Pharaoh's army died. It doesn't say the Pharaoh. And the other thing is, the author of the book said that the weapons of Pharaoh's army washed ashore, and the Israelis collected them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really neat. What book is that? Do you remember? Is it one of Jones's? Well, yeah. So that means that, the body's washed up, all right? But some of the bodies had the weapons on them, okay, and they washed up. So Israel left Egypt with the riches of Egypt, the wealth of Egypt, and then they had some of the weapons of Egypt. So, yeah, neat. Yes. Okay, hold on. Coming to you, Gar.
My question is, isn't the grumbling and complaining a lot have to do with they had children with them? They're complaining they're thirsty and they're yelling, "Are we there yet?" That sort of thing. And they got animals that they got to deal with as well. They're bringing along with them, right? So we're talking about massive children, massive animals along with, and that's why they complain. I think.
Yeah. Hold on.
By complaining, they got their wish.
Now you know why they're known as B'nai Israel, the children of Israel. It's not only that they were literally related to Israel, their ancestor, but they were children, as are we. So, and I think you're right. And I remember traveling when my children were young. Boy, oh boy. Don't make me reach back there. Those were my words. I will turn this car around. We will go home. And Gail would be like, don't say that. You don't mean that. We're going to where. And she'd be like, never give a command that you're not ready to carry out, or a warning that you're not ready to carry out, because they will find your weakness. My wife was really good like that. She had a bunch of brothers and sisters. I didn't. And she knew a whole lot, and she's like, you don't want to do that. You don't want to give an ultimatum unless you are willing and ready to carry out that ultimatum. So turning around. So then I began to, rather than we'll turn around, it was, when we get there, I will lock you in this vehicle. For what, 5 minutes? I don't know. Long enough for you to go, Daddy, we're sorry. I never did that. I'm just joking. Okay, hold on. Yes, I do. I need the mic.
I just wanted you to point out the 5 dry lands, because I didn't count 5.
Oh, you didn't? Well, you need to read it again. I don't know if I can do that right now. I don't have it down where I can go back, but I will go look. I'll go look and see if there's less. Maybe maybe it begins with you will go through on dry ground. Maybe it begins with that. You will go through on dry ground. And then they went through on dry ground. Yes. Yes. No, all of it. Yeah. The whole reading, the whole section there. Okay, bringing the mic over to Dana.
In our men's group, we've been studying a book about how to walk and speak in tongues, and to do that, and where the power is in doing that. And we're listening here tonight about God telling Moses to speak. And then as we read further on in the New Testament, Paul is telling us to speak. He's telling us to ask. He's telling us to seek, and you'll find. Knock, and the door will be open unto you. Now, I know that's a knock part of it, but anyhow, the idea is that God wants us to speak to him in songs and in prayers and with musical instruments. He wants us to worship him. And worship is our form of speaking to God and telling him that we love him, we need him, we're thankful for him, we are, anyhow, all of that stuff. And I'm sure that the children of Israel back in those times, when the water was coming out of the rock like a flood, and there were 3 million of them there, and they're all getting wet at the same time. That must be that's a lot of water.
Maybe they built those slip and slides for the young ones out of the water as they're coming down. But you're right. You're absolutely right. And it's what is he right? Rabbi Paul writes, though I speak in the languages of men or angels. So angels have a language, right? So good. Okay, anybody else? One more over here. Hey, you moved. I looked over. I thought you were David.
He's better looking than I. So I don't want to create a discussion on the doctrine of faith, but I love the part where you're discussing right here about consistent faith and how the Israelites themselves believed only for a certain amount of time, and then they would quickly lose that sight, and then something else would happen, and they would come back. And so going back to what I said about doctrine of faith, I love it because I don't like to tell people I'm saved unless they haven't become part of the culture and the belief system. We walk in this beautiful arena. We are in the process of being saved. And it's what I love about that statement, because I like to bring up Revelations 20 because it speaks directly to how it's those who take part in that first resurrection, and that's where you know that you have been saved, and not having to take part in that second death. So that caught my eye. I just wanted to share that without trying to pop anybody's thoughts on doctrine of faith, but we can share more about it later, but that's what came to my mind.
Yeah, that is really good. And really, if you look back on the whole journey from Egypt all the way into the land, all right, Paul uses that whole journey as an example of our lives with God. Even the water, right? What is the water? What does that represent? Baptism, mikvah. There was a cleansing when they went out of Egypt, even though they didn't get wet. The water was all around them and on them, so he uses it that way. So it's really good. Yep. Good. Okay, Alan.
The interesting thing about the word that they use for believe, it said they feared and believed him. Well, it's not the same kind of word that we use for believe in the New Testament, which is a very strong word. This is a very weak, tepid word, which means to voice support, which basically means we're going to vote to go with you right now, but, if things change, we'll change our mind. It's not a word of conviction. It was probably a very bad translation to use the word believe in that point. No. It's something much, much weaker than that. Yeah, we're afraid of you, because you're pretty strong. But if things don't go right, we'll always go back to Egypt.
Ay, 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 ay. All right, with that, I will leave you guys and say goodnight to all of you online and everybody else. And God bless you. And, I want to let you know, a reminder, Friday night, if you're going to be here, is a fifth Friday. So we're going to have a potluck. And I think we haven't had one of those in like a year. So we're going to have one of those here, bring something to eat and share with others. And remember that the vast majority of us, eat by the Bible. And so don't bring ham sandwiches or shrimp surprise. And don't hide it in a casserole. Okay? Just to love one another. That's all. A Hebrew word for potluck. I don't know. Is there? We could use that word if I knew what it was. Probably is. Shema Yisrael. All right. Good. Wait, David knows what it is. What is it? It's what? M-bait? M-bait. Oh. And with that, good night. Yehovah bless all of you.